Hey there, folks. Today we're going to be back with another family tree. This time looking again into more alternative history. This time being about Ireland. Specifically, pondering the question: what if Ireland made Prince Joachim of Prussia King of Ireland? Now, first, I want to give some context as to why this could have been possible and why it was even considered. Now, Ireland, for hundreds of years of its history, had been ruled by various English and British monarchs, all the way back to when Henry II invaded Ireland during the Anglo-Norman invasion. First, it was the Lordship of Ireland, starting with Henry II. Then, under Henry VIII, it would turn into the Kingdom of Ireland, before eventually merging with the Kingdom of Great Britain to become the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland. However, in the early part of the 20th century, Ireland experienced a large amount of revolutionary thoughts and movements, ultimately leading to the independence of the Irish Free State in 1922 alongside Northern Ireland that would remain as a part of the United Kingdom all the way to today. However, during this period, in April 1916, there was an event known as the Easter Rising, when in Dublin and some surrounding areas, Irish Republicans strove to make an independent Irish state. Now, while a majority of Irish Republicans obviously didn't want a monarchy as they had been ruled by one for hundreds of years prior, there were a few who saw an advantage in having a monarch. Specifically, they thought that having Prince Joachim of Germany would be the best candidate for king. Now, one major reason as to why he was considered was because of the situation of Ireland to begin with. If Ireland were to become an independent state, of course Great Britain would want it back immediately. Of course, they saw it as their rightful territory that they had ruled for hundreds of years. And so Joachim provided a very good candidate because it would establish very good connections with a fellow European country, a very strong European country, that of Germany. And they even strongly considered that if Germany would win World War One, then they would definitely go through with it, as if Germany had just beat the British in the war, then of course having the son of the German Emperor, Wilhelm II, as their king would provide a massive advantage and would guarantee their protection, more or less. Even more so, Joachim happened to not know English. He only spoke German, and if he were to have become King of Ireland, would have maybe learned Irish. This was very important to the Irish people, as it was part of their de-Anglicization of Ireland, as English had been made the primary language of Ireland by the English and British for hundreds of years, and they were slowly trying to reintroduce Irish into the country. Now, Joachim had already been considered for a monarch in two other countries, both in Georgia and in Lithuania, as during the 1917 Russian Revolution, Russia fell and other smaller groups such as Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, Georgia, Armenia, Ukraine, etc., all the countries that made up the Russian Empire slowly started splitting away, of which some of them decided to become monarchies. Some Georgian loyalists considered Joachim to be a good candidate for the same reasons that Ireland would in this timeline, as it would provide a strong alliance with Germany, who of course Germany and Russia have been historic enemies, and in Lithuania, as it would be more or less for the same reason, as Lithuania was also considering having a monarchy and wanted a German monarch so it would be able to protect them in case they ever got in a war, specifically with Russia, who of course they broke away from. Which they actually did end up becoming a monarch, although they elected their monarch, who happened to be the Duke of Urach, Wilhelm Karl, who was also another German. Now, onto the tree itself. Now, Joachim. Now, we can't exactly say when Joachim would have become the monarch of Ireland. Of course, the Easter Rising started in 1916, meaning it's the earliest date that we can put him as, although really between 1916 all the way to his death in 1920, he could have become king at any point in time during that in this timeline. I've just put it as 1916 on the tree, but I've added a little asterisk next to it just to indicate that it's not exact if he could have been placed in that year. Now, of course, because Joachim isn't really an Irish name, they would have used the Irish equivalent of that name, being Joachim, which it was heavily likely, if this would have panned out, that he would have used that name anyways, as King of Ireland, of course, to support the Irish language, of which I already covered. They were slowly trying to reintroduce into Ireland after centuries of English being used as one of the primary languages in it by the British monarchy. Now, unfortunately for Joachim, during his lifetime he was extremely depressed. Now, some say that it started in 1918 when Germany lost World War I, therefore he lost his titles, he lost his land, and he lost all future prospects of being able to do anything, more or less. However, some also say that it was also because of his marriage to Marie Auguste of Anhalt. It was said that their marriage was slowly deteriorating for most of the time that they were married. There's even unfortunately claims that Joachim would have beaten his wife sometimes. It would be in 1920 though, in Potsdam, Germany, that he would take his own life, unfortunately. Of course, very sad. Maybe might not have happened in this timeline if he would have been made King of Ireland, but of course we can't make things up. So the crown would go to his son, Carl, who in Irish would have been named Siarlas. When Joachim died, his son Siarlas would have only been a small child. Of course, he wouldn't have been able to reign as king all on his own, so he would require a regent. Now, in our timeline, his uncle, Eitel Friedrich of Prussia, stepped in to be his caretaker. However, this was declared illegal in 1921, and the guardianship of him was given to his mother, Marie Auguste of Anhalt, of which, in this timeline, she would have been the regent for him until he turned 18 in 1934. Now, Siarlas in our timeline served in the German military during World War II. Of course, almost every single German man did, as it was a requirement. He served as a lieutenant and even earned the Iron Cross. Although in this timeline, I heavily doubt that he would at all ally himself to the Germans for a multitude of reasons. Now, in my interpretation, he would have either likely stayed neutral, just as Ireland had in our timeline's World War II, or, a bit more interesting, he would have allied himself with the Allies such as Great Britain, France, and the United States. Now, the reason why I feel like he could have this would actually probably be more likely than staying neutral is because he had German blood and was directly related to the former German imperial family. This is of course because when most people would look at the situation happening in Europe and they saw that a German-blooded man, a man who was entirely German, ruled Ireland and didn't at all speak out or go against the actions of Germany during World War II, of course they might have some suspicion that he agreed with it. Specifically, the British would think this, which obviously, if you're directly next to a country that is at war with Germany, you probably don't want to be seen as a German ally, especially if the country next to you is Britain, and you have no other country around you at all that could really give you any support if Britain were to invade you. This could also bolster his legitimacy, as having a German-blooded man also be the King of Ireland and directly protect the Irish nationality as separate from German would of course protect the national identity and boost nationalism. Now, he married Princess Henrietta of Schonach-Carolath, who just so happened to be the daughter of Hermine Reuss, the former wife of his own grandfather, Emperor Wilhelm II of Germany, technically marrying his own step-aunt. He did actually have two other daughters in Chile with one of his other wives, as of course after World War II many German leaders did move to South America, countries like Chile, Argentina, Brazil, etc. Although in this timeline, of course, since he would have obviously never served in the German military, he wouldn't have moved to Chile at all. He would of course stayed in Ireland and been the king for another few decades. until his death in 1975. Now, after his death, his son Franz Wilhelm would inherit, and in Irish, his name Franz would be Proinsias. Now, Proinsias in this timeline would be the current reigning king of Ireland, with the term High King likely being used, translating to Ardlui of Ely, Ely being Irish for Ireland. Now, he would have ruled, as of now in this timeline, for well over 50 years, making him the second longest reigning monarch in the entire continent of Europe, just behind Karl XVI Gustav of Sweden. He would also be the 5th longest reigning monarch in the world. That's currently still reigning. He is actually very notable, specifically because of who he married. He happened to marry Grand Duchess Maria Vladimirovna of Russia, the head of the House of Romanov since 1992, and direct relative descendant and claimant to the Russian imperial throne, meaning that upon Proinsias' death and the death of Maria Vladimirovna, their child, whose Irish name would be Sioris, would inherit both the Kingdom of Ireland and the claimant to the imperial throne of Russia, being the very first person with a very legitimate claim to the throne of Russia to hold an actual royal or noble title since the fall of the Russian Empire. Alright guys, I hope you like this tree. I personally think that this is actually a pretty good concept. Not many people actually know about this. I did some researching on it, and not a lot of people actually know about this, which I'm very surprised by, considering the fact that alternate histories are actually a very commonly discussed topic in the space of like family trees and royalty. A lot of people like to do this specifically, me included. But I hope you liked it, and if you want to see more content, like and subscribe. Bye.